Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I It's alive!
Welcome to Where the Weird Ones Are.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out.
Powerful figures in Hollywood as well as powerful politicians who are in fact not human. They're reptiles or they're lizards or perhaps extraterrestrials.
I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
Go ahead and run. Run home and cry to mama.
Let's get weird.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin. I will be your host for today. This is my sister, my co-host, Tanya. Say hi.
Hi. Oh, I'm sorry. I know how much you love my little intros, so I'll do it just for my big brother. I didn't have one ready though. Okay, so hi, I'm Tanya, and I will physically fight anybody who talks shit about The Emperor's New Groove. Boom. Fight me. It's a great movie.
You threw off my groove.
Oh my God. That is the lamest thing ever.
So today on the podcast we had Jennie. She has a bit of a list of experiences she has had since she was a child. Most notably revolved around a mirror in recent years. She also had her partner Oren on, who also experienced things. He's actually currently working on a book, and we're gonna have him on for his own episode later on. He's revolving. His book is revolving around aliens and UFOs, right? That's what he said.
Yeah, like Men in Black and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna buy it. I will, even if
Oh,
he's
yeah.
like putting it out for free, because I know a lot of people do it for free. I'll just buy it anyway.
Yeah.
Which actually, while we're on the subject, I've been wanting to be a writer for a really long time, and I am actually currently working on a book.
Are you?
I've been working on this book for 5 years.
Oh, what's it about?
It's about a former Navy SEAL who becomes a hitman for a Mexican cartel.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. He
Sorry.
ends up leaving the cartel and has to go into hiding. And he takes care of a little girl. He raises a little girl.
How does it end?
You'll have to fucking read the book.
Yeah. Damn.
So,
All right.
but anyway, so I have a story for you.
Okay, and then I have something too. So tell me yours first.
All right, real quick. Actually, my story is not very quick, but in May of 1996, a Cal Poly student went missing. Her name was Kristen Smart. The last person to see her alive was also a Cal Poly student by the name of Paul Flores. He has been the number one suspect in her disappearance. Her body has never been found, but he recently was arrested in April of 2021, and his trial just took place, and he was convicted of murder in October. So it's been long speculated that his parents helped him cover it up. So his father was also on trial, but he was his father was being charged with carried a sentence of 3 years.
Mm.
But they found his father not guilty, but I think he's guilty as fuck. They found staining in the dirt underneath his father's porch that coincides with human remains. They also had cadaver dogs alert to his dorm room back in 2004, or no, not 2004. It because I think that was too close. I think it was 97. It was 97 and cadaver dog um alerted to his bedroom, and they didn't even really they weren't looking for his room. They were just in that dorm,
Mm.
and the cadaver dogs went right to his room. Um but this guy is now in his 40s, but he's been walking free for over a decade. And in high school, he was known as Scary Paul because he was apparently he was a creep. He touched women that didn't want to be touched. He would stare and all this stuff. And essentially, while he was still walking this fucking earth free, what he would do would he would spike women's drinks. He would get them to come to his house, and even women that were willing to that found him interesting and were willing to sleep with him, he still drugged them and then essentially raped them because they didn't know what was going on. And there was one girl that testified and everything, and she was basically saying that was kind of she was willingly there to hang out with him and
Mm.
stuff, and he probably like it doesn't I guess it doesn't really matter. But when so police ended up ramping up their investigation based off a podcast called um In Your Backyard or Your Backyard, and he details the whole thing. So if you are interested in the case, I would definitely look into this podcast. His name is Chris Lambert. It's the podcast name is Your Own Backyard, and he details from beginning to end. So he talks about all the investigation throughout back in the 90s into the early 2000s, and then he also details the whole entire trial, which is really interesting. And so in trial, it comes out that Mr. Paul Flores had numerous um, videos saved on his computers of essentially rape of women, of him with women that were unconscious in his bed.
Wow.
They also found child pornography.
Of course.
So
Yep.
not that it was the child pornography wasn't personal to him. It wasn't his wasn't pictures that he took. It
Right.
wasn't videos that he took. So he got it he got those probably from somebody. He's probably on some kind of internet platform where they were sharing stuff like that.
Oh yeah. That's
So
disgusting.
it is disgusting. It bothers me. The whole time listening to that podcast, it bothered me. I cried a couple of times, and I know I fucking almost every episode I talk about instances of me crying. But
Well,
the the fact is that the Smart family has never, they don't know what happened to their daughter. They still don't, per se. They know she's dead. They just don't know exactly what happened. So what's being said is that it's basically everything in trial is speculation, but with the amount of evidence of certain things, that's how they convicted him.
right. But he's just going to be a piece of shit and not admit it and not tell them like what he did to
Probably.
her and where because they don't. You said they never found her body.
Correct.
Oh.
It's a lot. So they're saying that her body was moved several times. It was under his dad's porch. They're saying that it was at his mother's house and stuff. So like when, yeah, so a friend of his from college testified that when everything came out, like he was like, "You have anything? You doing?" Oh, it was his roommate Derek, and he's like, did you have a good weekend?" He goes, "Yeah, I got with this girl or whatever, and blah 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 blah." And he goes, "You have anything to do with that missing girl?" Just like joking around. And
Mm.
he's like, "Yeah, she's at my mom's house." Yeah,
Okay.
that's fucking weird.
That is
And
weird.
his mom actually ended up putting her house up for rent because she was like off and on with his dad. Like they were
Yeah.
getting a divorce, but they were still trying to like work things out here and there.
Yeah.
So she put her house up for sale. I mean for rent. And these people rented the house. And the woman recalls a beeping noise at 4:20 in the morning every morning out in the yard.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a watch and it would go beep 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 every morning at 4:20 until the battery ran out, obviously.
Mhm.
But so they rented that house in 1997. So Kristen went missing May of 1996. So it was
Mhm.
about a year that before she was there. And she remembers the beeping was like about a week or two, she said. And they had just did like concrete work when they put a garden bed over this like 6 foot by 4 concrete slab, which Kristen was a 6 foot tall woman. She was a tall girl.
Okay, that's a little suspicious.
Yeah. And they put a garden bed on top of this um, concrete slab, and they could never get anything to grow out of it because it's sitting on top of concrete.
Right.
But she said something to the I can't remember if it was near the garden bed or if it was on the side of the house where the beeping was coming from. But in this podcast, Your Own Backyard, he interviews the parents of Kristen Smart, and
Mhm.
she said that her daughter was getting up at 4:30 in the morning.
Oh,
So
damn.
her watch was alarming her to get up at 4:20.
Right, yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Well, then,
And her dad would go on hiking trips all around the college every day to try and find his daughter. And he knew that he was going to find a body if he found her.
right.
And he would crawl through gutters. He would go through under tunnels into these little caves, and he would get on his hands and knees and go into places that nobody necessarily would go to.
Mhm.
So when I was hearing about like all the searching he did, that was when I really started crying. So
Yeah. Well, probably hits different when you're a parent.
right.
Um,
But I'm glad he's behind bars and he can't really hurt anybody anymore.
yeah.
Honestly, what I think is going to happen is he'll probably get murdered in prison before
Oh,
anything ever
yeah.
happens.
Yeah, especially if when they find out about the child porn.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, like,
just being a rapist alone.
rape, yeah, being a rapist alone, but especially like doing anything to children, like that I mean, like you're the lowest of the low in
Mm,
prison
right.
when you're a sex offender, especially anything to do with children. So,
Mm, exactly.
so
So, what's your story? So that's my story. Paul Flores is finally behind bars after 26 years.
well, that doesn't make sense. Well, is his mom dead?
Whose mom?
Paul Flores, his mother.
No,
Because why was his dad tried, but she wasn't? Because it sounds like
because
maybe.
they couldn't find evidence of her being buried there, I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
Even I mean, they brought cadaver dogs there, and they alerted to 3 different parts of her yard. as there being human remains, but they couldn't like find substantiating evidence
Oh, it's kind of shitty.
to try her. So,
Well,
although I do think all three of them, like if you listen to the podcast, the parents were just as despicable as he is.
mm,
Like things that they said, things that they wrote. The mother wrote a letter to Kristen's mom after. Well, Kristen's mom wrote a letter to Susan, Paul's mom, to appeal to her humanity to try and get Paul to come forward and tell what happened.
mm.
And she basically just wrote her a letter back and said, if I wanted your daughter's fucking pictures, I would have asked you for them.
Wow, that's shitty.
Yeah.
Wow. What a garbage human being. Whether or not she helped her son, like that's a garbage thing to do.
Yeah, no shit.
Oh. Anyway, so I don't have any crazy stories like that. I just wanted to do a correction from last week because we were talking about great grand, and probably nobody listening cares, but I care. So we said that you said she had 19 kids. I said she had 17 kids. She had 18 kids. I was playing the audio for mom, and it got to that part where I corrected you and was like, oh, she had 17. Because I think in my head I was thinking, because I always tell people my grandmother had 17 brothers and sisters, so I think that's probably why I was thinking 17.
Yeah,
But
probably.
you said 19, I said 17, and mom goes, she had 18, and I was like, oh god damn it. But yeah, I wanted to also just kind of, I wasn't expecting that to come up, like the story and the Purple Heart and everything. So I kind of wanted to tell that story a little bit better too, because it is actually a really interesting story.
Okay.
So, and yeah, I wasn't expecting it to come up, so I just kind of told it half-assed. But so our great grandmother, her name was Elsie. Her mother remarried to this man, and her mother and this man had a baby together. So she had a half brother, and then her stepbrother, and I don't know who else. She had other stepbrothers or half brothers, whatever. But so her stepbrother's name was Leslie, and he was older than Elsie, and so when he came of age, he married Elsie. So they're not related by blood or anything. And I don't know if there was any romantic love between them. There was clearly some kind of like love. I just don't know if it was romantic love, because his reasoning for marrying her was that his father was abusive, and he knew that his father was abusive, so he wanted to get Elsie out of that situation. So he married her, and enlisted and went to war, World War II, and he died in France. And so his father had his body brought back to the United States, but he's buried in New York, even though he's from Maine, and nobody knows why his dad didn't bring him back to Maine, if it was a matter of just not having the money to bring him all the way back to Maine, or if it was just like like one last like F you to Elsie or whatever. But he earned a Purple Heart, and it was given to his dad, and his dad wouldn't let her have it. Elsie, he wouldn't let her have it. And so Elsie, she had a really interesting life. She was married 2 more times after that. Her last husband was our great grandfather. And she obviously was still, in contact with his family because they shared a half brother. And I think it was the half brother's son who ended up with a Purple Heart after Leslie, her husband. I don't know if I said his name earlier, but his name was Leslie. So after Leslie's father died, her half brother's son ended up with a Purple Heart. And I feel like it was last year. I feel like it was really recent. um, mom mom has for years been into ancestry.com and like finding out things. And so just from ancestry and then talking to Graham and Grandpa, she's been finding out all these really interesting stories about our ancestors. And so she was telling me the story about Leslie, and then I guess Mom and Graham decided to visit um, the half brother's son who had the Purple Heart, and he gave it to Graham, and he told her, you know, this should have been Elsie's and it should be yours, and so I want you to have it. So Graham has officially has the Purple Heart. And I think it was earlier this summer, maybe it was last summer, Mom and Auntie and Graham went to New York to visit Leslie's grave, and they brought him some flowers, and they brought the Purple Heart to him. They didn't obviously didn't leave it there because, you know, um, but there's pictures of Graham at the grave with the Purple Heart and everything. So, um, and I think just last week, the week before, Graham was talking about like she's trying to, he doesn't have, I guess, you know, when a soldier dies and they had earned a Purple Heart, they get like some kind of like memorial on their grave. That like signifies that they had the Purple Heart, and he doesn't have it on his. So they're trying to get that done so that he can be recognized as a Purple Heart recipient. And they were trying to figure out his cause of death as well. But unfortunately, those records were destroyed in a fire, so they don't have his cause of death. They just know he was killed in action in France. And I think that's it. That's the story of the Purple Heart.
Nice. It's a good story. I didn't know any of it.
Yeah, I mean, I never would have known, but Mom, we were going to visit Uncle Keith and you know all them that are buried up there around him, and she decided to bring me around to all these different graveyards and tell me all these different stories of the people who were buried. Like she's got so many stories of all these different people that are buried in these cemeteries, and it was really cool to hear. But knowing like that story that's more close to home, because it was Elsie, you know.
Yeah.
So she had a
Well,
really interesting life.
yeah. Well, I'm actually kind of glad that I asked you to be my co-host, because in that instance of her being like, "What's the heirloom?" I would have been like, "I don't know what the fuck you're talking about."
Yeah, and I wonder, I was talking to Mom about that too. I was like, I wonder if she even would have said anything if I hadn't been on the podcast, because I wonder if she said it because she knows that I know.
That you knew,
Yeah. And
maybe.
yeah, she knows that you don't know. So I wonder if she would have.
Right. I mean, if she's my spirit guide, she knows what I know.
Right.
So,
Right. Or maybe she was just like, well, hopefully they're smart enough to ask around if they don't know. But yeah, I played that part of the podcast for Mom, and Mom, you know, when she was talking about like, you know, you wouldn't talk back to her, but you wouldn't be afraid to go to her for advice. Mom was just like, yep, yep, definitely.
yeah,
So, but
that's good.
I haven't told Graham yet, and I can't wait to tell Graham because Graham is going to be thrilled.
It's good. It's good to have affirmation. Um. So, anyways, moving on, since we're taking a little bit longer for this intro, which isn't a bad thing. I don't care. Not a
Mm.
not a big deal. But so we had Jennie and Oren on. Centralized around Jennie and her experiences. Tanya, what'd you think?
I thought her experience. Okay, so she gets into an incubus story, and I thought that was like I don't even know. I would be terrified. I thought like most of her experiences didn't seem. I don't know if I'd call them positive, but they weren't, you know, bad experiences.
Right.
But that one, I don't think I would enjoy. Well, I don't think anybody would enjoy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Right.
So, but we have a couple more episodes scheduled already. So hopefully we can keep this train rolling and kick out more content and talk to more people like you and like Jennie. and Oren. Oren will be on hopefully sometime in January. It was awesome. I really enjoyed conversating with them. They were both very well spoken. They knew their shit. They obviously researched the things that they went through a little bit. So that was fun. I'm actually talking to a woman right now who she's like, I'm not an investigator. It's just what I have is just going to be wild stories. I was like, oh, so like you experienced them, right? So hopefully this episode will be a little more affirming for her to break out of her shyness and come on. So anyways, this is where the weird ones are. I'm Kevin. This is Tanya. If you would like to be on the show, you can email me at wheretheweirdonесare@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram, which is where_the_weirdonesare. And you can message me, DM me on there. Where the weird ones are on YouTube. Let me know if you watch this. Just comment where you're from. I just want to see how many people are actually watching and paying attention and where you're all from. I just looked at the year wrapped up on Spotify for this podcast, which only shows me up to episode 6 because they did the yearly wrap up before I really started networking. So I really got into network in probably November-ish, October, and started reaching out to people more and started getting the this show out a little bit more. So they only are going off based off the 6 episodes that I had previously put out. So I believe there was like it's 499 downloads. And episode 2 was the favorite.
What was
So
episode 2?
it is Anthony's wife, Chandra.
Oh, yes, I did listen to that one. Dude, that was crazy. That one scared me.
I like how she found the dress that she was envisioning in her mind.
Yeah, that mhm. She's talking about like this woman like running past her, and I'm like, no way, get me out of
Yeah,
that. Like, no.
that was a good one. They're
It
good
was
people.
good. Yeah.
So also if you want to follow my sister, it's T Sapiel at on Instagram. She doesn't want you to fucking follow her on something else, so don't ask.
Oh, my OnlyFans, yeah. No,
Yeah.
don't follow me there.
It's just jokes. Yeah, so if you want to follow her, you can follow her on Instagram, follow me. You want to be on the show, like I said, just reach out to one of us. Anyways, I hope you enjoy the discussion today. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Where the Weird Ones Are. I'm Kevin. You know Tanya. Today we have Jennie on the podcast to talk about her trickster, possible poltergeist. She has a laundry list of events, and I am intrigued to listen. So, how are you doing, Jennie?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me on. This is so fun.
I'm so happy to have you. I've always loved a lot of Southern things, and your guys' voice. I love the accent. It's I don't know. I like hearing it. My cousin lives in North Carolina, and her husband has a wicked thick Southern accent, and I don't know why. It's just something that I've always liked hearing.
Well, get ready because I have one of the thickest Southern accents that you will find. I grew up in Georgia. The story will go that way, but yes.
Perfect. So, you got a couple stories. You got them all listed chronologically.
Yes.
So we can get right into that if you would like.
Okay. Well, so when I was very little, as far back as I can remember, there was just kind of like strange things happening. But when I was about 5 or 6, we moved into a house, and my father started working third shift for a power company, and so he was never home. Like he wasn't home at night, and like weird things would happen. We called him a ghost. We had a ghost that my brother saw, and he was only like 2 years old, and he named the ghost David. I don't know why. So we had just this kind of living ghost. Now, I was telling this story to someone else, and someone, pointed out the stories about the flannel man. And I'd never heard of this, but I don't know. I don't know what it was, but it was in the house. He was very benevolent. He never hurt anybody. We called him by name. He just kind of lingered. You just catch a glimpse of him. But this was very much like humanoid form, not like a shadow or anything like that. So, so we basically had a ghost for a couple of years. And that was fun. So a little bit later, and I haven't like figured out the origin of this, but my mom said that this is a couple of years later. I was probably about 8 or 9. So let's fast forward about 4 years. A centaur.
Whoa.
Right.
What?
A centaur. Now, this is what she said. We all just talked. We thought she was crazy. There's been several family jokes about the centaur that may or may not have fathered my youngest brother. Like it just lots of strange things happened, and I was very little, so I don't know. I don't know if like that's what I saw through child eyes. So we fast forward a little bit, and we moved into another house when I was around 13. And at this point, my father had quit working third shift. So this stuff just kind of, it went away. Nothing ever happened in this house. And we stayed in this house for a very long time, until I was an adult. And just nothing. So let's fast forward a little bit. I moved out at 19 and got married and did, I was married and had kids and stuff. And that was also a time of not a lot going on. So let's go a little bit more time. So around 2012, I got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
I moved into a house by myself, which was coincidentally across from a large military base. I'm not saying this has anything to do with it, but I'm not saying it doesn't. So,
right.
So also, I had something. That was a very scary place too, and basically it wasn't scary before because this had been like a second home. So I had been to this place before, like, and nothing happened. But when I lived there alone, weird things started happening. And, that kind of goes back to John Keel and, lonely women being alone, women being somewhat isolated.
Yep.
So that happened. And yet again, Flannel Man, I don't know enough about Flannel Man. This has just been pointed out to me, but I just joked. I said, the ghost of Kurt Cobain lives in my house with me. He just visits, he lingers in the doorway. He doesn't do anything. Yet again, very, very benevolent, whatever the situation was.
So what's the reason for calling him Flannel Man? You can see him wearing a flannel, or it's just...
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And have you heard of that particular?
I personally have not. Tanya, have you?
No.
No?
Have not.
So we hadn't heard about it either. Another podcast we were on probably a couple months ago, she was telling these stories, and the host pointed out, he's like, "Hey, that sounds like Flannel Man," and we hadn't heard anything about it, but it's supposedly like an archetype of these kind of visitations and whatnot. And we've done some research since then. Haven't found a whole lot of conclusive anything, but it sounds like it is, like I said, an archetype of some sort of visitor that people see, this entity with like flannel shirts. A lot of times they describe them in like jeans and whatnot, and same thing, very benevolent. But no, until a month or so ago, it was news to us as well. So we're just kind of trying to piece the pieces of that together as well.
That sounds a lot like Hat Man, because it's it's like along the same lines. It's just a guy in a hat.
Yes, very much so.
Yes. So this is where I'm going to insert the mirror.
Okay.
The haunted mirror. So I had a mirror that was around my entire, like, it was my mother's mirror before me and possibly my grandmother's mirror. So this mirror got passed down, and this mirror was with me my entire life. And up to this point, nothing weird, like it wasn't like a connection thing with the mirror. I didn't start connecting the dots on this, but it started misbehaving a little bit in this place that I lived. Just coldness, scariness, just in general creepiness. So, right. But yet again, I've still not connected it to this mirror. Okay, so let's fast forward yet again. So I moved to Raleigh in the end of 2016. Okay, here's where stuff started getting really, really weird. I moved into an apartment. Now, the things I'm going to tell you now are things I didn't know, obviously, at the time.
Okay.
But in, let's see, I've got my dates here. In 2002, there was a young lady named Stephanie Bennett who was brutally raped and murdered in this complex. And keep in mind, this isn't a large complex. Mm-hmm. So proximity, I don't know. I don't know where it happened. I don't know, but it was long before I moved there. Also, in the backyard of this complex sits a man-made lake, which, there's all that stuff about digging and removing the earth and stuff. So this place, stuff was always happening. Like, oh, and let me add to my brilliance here. Because, all right, so there was a fuse box beside, it was in the kitchen, which I could see from my room.
Right.
I put the mirror on top of it because to cover up the ugly fuse box. So I've been told, oh, great, you fed it. You put it on a power source and fed it. So anyway, so there was constantly shadow stuff coming from this mirror, but I would never see it like come actually from the mirror. It was just always like beside the mirror, like up in the corners. And he even saw it at some point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
did you have more mirrors other than just that mirror? Were there more other mirrors in that room?
Yeah, you had mirrors all over the apartment. And the instance I saw it, we were, laying in bed one night, and for some reason I just sat bolt upright, and how the bed was positioned, you could see this corner of the kitchen from the bed. And I saw, the traditional humanoid shadow person, dark, tall figure in the corner. And, like everybody says, just an overwhelming sense of dread, all that. I was just terrified. And so I saw that thing, and, she said, this is what's been happening, tried to calm me down, whatnot. And so we were trying to go back to sleep. And at some point in the night, I don't know how much further it was after the initial sighting, but for some reason her phone just like lights up for no reason, like no call, no text, like nothing, just the phone screen lights up. And at that point I freaked out. But so I can attest to, I've seen weird stuff happening in that apartment too.
And that was the first time I ever shared any of this stuff with anyone, because, you know, you're crazy. You're
Right.
There's nothing going on. And he immediately believed me. He said, "No, I believe you." And I said,
Right.
"Really?" So
That's always nice for affirmation, especially with somebody you're connected with intimately. So that's always, I feel like that makes a bond a little bit stronger, in my opinion.
oh yes, yes, for sure. So, you know, that was happening. There was the shadow thing with the mirror. Um, there was what I would call poltergeist a bit activity there. You know, sometimes I would wake up and I would hear just beeping, like it sounded like Morse code to me. And I was like, I've got to start writing this down when this happens, because it was just, and it was loud. I could,
Mm-hmm.
like, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't tinnitus or anything like that. It was literally just beep, 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 beep. And that happened some trickster stuff, like my stuff would disappear and show up in a weird place. I had like a little mirror. Now, granted, this could happen, a little like makeup mirror, you know, John. Yep. And I'd stick it on the bigger mirror and it would just pop off. It just pop off for no reason. Granted, that could happen. So all this is going on.
But then also there's like, we'd find your hairbrush in the kitchen cabinets, like things that like you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. The mirror popping off, you could chalk that up to coincidence, but you would not have put the hairbrush in the kitchen cabinet.
I do some weird things, but that is good. So the timeline of all this happening is over the course of 6 years. I don't live there anymore, by the way. But
I don't think I would either. Hopefully it didn't follow you.
No, because yeah, I'll get to this. But guess what? I don't have anymore.
Okay.
The mirror.
But, so you said that you didn't have any other mirrors in that particular room, though?
Like, so it was a 1-bedroom apartment. So like there might have been a small one hanging on the wall in like the other part of the room, but not in the kitchen. And like the other mirrors, you know, like the bathroom had a mirror, and obviously like a full-length mirror in my bedroom for, you know, for clothes and stuff. So why do you ask?
Well, because so they say that because mirrors technically are portals. Mm-hmm. And a good way to open up the portal is by having several mirrors in one room where they're all intersecting across the room. Like, so they're looking at each other in a way. You know what I mean? So like almost like a 4-way.
Mm. I do. And, you know, honestly, with my bedroom door shut, the mirror that was hanging on the front of the door could have absolutely connected with the other mirror. So I don't know, that just weirdness. So all this was not happening. It started gradually. It started with the shadow. Mm-hmm. And then like it started, you know, just being scared, thinking something was in the house. And I don't think this was all one thing. I think these were different things. So here we get to the grand finale. So I started being visited quite frequently by an incubus.
Oh, and boy.
We know what I'm saying, right?
Right. Right.
And this thing would come, and I sleep on my stomach, so it's not the story of like it was on me. I never saw this, but I felt it. Mm-hmm. It put pressure on me. It spoke to me without speaking. Like I could hear it, but it wasn't being said. Nothing
like
was.
telekinetically in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And this was so scary. Like it was so scary. And now I've kind of learned that they feed off fear. So I
Right.
was feeding it just what it wanted. And I would start throwing Bible verses, like there's this verse about if two or more are gathered in my name and stuff. And I was like, it would say, yeah, but there's not two of you here. Like this thing was just telling me stuff, and it didn't care. It didn't care if I, tried to rebuke it. And I'm not going with a religious way on that. Just
Right.
I was grasping at straws. And I slept the TV on every night for 6 years, because if I cut the TV off, stuff would happen.
Okay. So did it ever visit you while Oren was with you?
Just that one time is when I saw the shadow person. I never experienced anything like this, but just from the little bit I saw, I mean, I find it pretty easy to believe.
Right.
But the incubus absolutely did not come. I don't know why, but it never showed up when he was around.
Yeah.
And
Well, they so the story goes is that both succubus and incubi, they like to get you when you're alone.
yes,
They come for you when you're alone. They come for you when you're vulnerable.
yes, and I think that would just all the the strange things that had happened there before. I don't know. Maybe the veil was a bit thinner there. I don't know. But this year, and I didn't really know anything about the solstices. Like this is something new with me. This whole esoteric side of things.
Okay.
But during the summer solstice, it attacked me so just, it was the scariest thing I've ever encountered in my life.
Mm-hmm.
A month later, I moved in with him. I was done. So nothing has happened. Not a thing.
Good.
So
Tanya, do you know what an incubus is?
I do, actually. I read about them a while ago. And I can say I've been fortunate enough to never cross paths with one. But yeah, I read about incubus and succubus a while ago. And then I thought it was messed up that there was a band that would like name themselves incubus.
right.
Right. I think
Seems kinda
the
weird.
most problem that I have with that is that they're actually kind of good too.
I know.
So, for anybody who's listening, an incubus is an evil, or is said to be a demonic entity that feeds off of a female. So there's also a succubus, which is the female version of an incubus. A succubus will essentially sleep with a male, a physical male, human man, and contain his seed, and then she will give it to the incubus, and then the incubus will find a female human and insert said semen.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
fortunately, you have not had to deal with the actual conception of it.
Yes.
At least I was saying that assumingly, but
No devil babies.
No devil babies here.
So nothing new since then.
No, the mirror was put at the dumpster. I didn't break it because I didn't want that bad juju. But in retrospect now, I'm like, why didn't we why didn't we study this? Why didn't we, get some paranormal tools? Because I've got a whole box of that stuff now, but I didn't at the time. I'm like, why didn't we use meters on it or the ghost box, or why didn't we? But we just weren't there yet. So
right. So have you since tried, like, so you haven't had any experiences, but have you had possibly tried to connect with spirit since your last encounter?
I play around with the spirit box quite a bit.
Yeah.
Nothing really no really good yields. I think mostly because proximity. Raleigh is so saturated, like we are so overpopulated. I feel
Mhm.
like maybe if we took it someplace else, like we'd like to go do some investigating, and we just haven't. So
Right. I want to do investigating myself, especially after talking, because most of the people that I talk to on here are investigators, and the stories that they have are just Ron actually on episode 11 that I have, he actually was asking a spirit to open and close a door, and every time he asked it to do so, the door would open or it would close. Almost not like instant, but it would take a minute and then it would do it. So I would like to actually see that. I mean, but I I personally saw a lot of things too when I was growing up. I It mostly happened around the time when my parents were going through divorce, and and we were living with my grandparents and stuff, so like there was a lot of like
You were in a liminal state then,
exactly.
when a lot of this stuff tends to happen. It seems like
Yeah.
a lot of chaos and whatnot's going on. And
Right.
I think
You're
this kind of goes back to her story as well. These things really ramped up, after the divorce, moving into a new place. So
right.
I think there's definitely that aspect to all this.
And it was 2012 for her, so I don't know if you know the the conspiracy with 2012, but it said that we all in unison have died in 2012, and that we are living currently in just a simulation.
oh wow, I have not heard that, but that's very interesting.
Yeah, and that's where you get like the Mandela effect and all that stuff,
Mhm.
where things that you remember from probably before 2012, like the Britney Spears thing, the Hit Me Baby One More Time music video, where she is wearing a black uh skirt, but everybody could have sworn that it was plaid.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have thought it was plaid.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember it being plaid too. But I guess supposedly now in the video when you go back to it, it's black, or vice versa. But I'm pretty sure that I was remembering it as plaid. So
No, that stuff is crazy. Like,
yeah.
yes.
And I've also heard story, this goes back with like the Mayan calendar and all that, and like
Yep.
we entered a new phase or something of that nature. So yeah, I mean that's a rabbit hole that once you start going down, there's a whole lot to dig into.
I've gone down uh a few rabbit holes, and I'd I'd find something to look into, and then I'd be like, "Whoa, what the hell is this?" And then I'd look into that, which is like along the same lines, like Pizzagate. I don't know if you know anything about that. Like
Very well.
government conspiracy to cover up pedophilia and all that stuff. I got wicked deep into that, and I got lost, and I didn't know which way. Like I was like, there's so many people involved in this stuff, and Twitter has been like one of the biggest like avenues for them to use, and since Elon Musk has taken over it, the traffic has gone right down.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if him taking it over is necessarily a good thing, but the aspect of that happening is is a win for me in my eyes.
Yes.
So did you, when you were younger, did you was there anything going on with you personally, other than like the experiences that may have kind of like thinned the veil for you?
Well, mentioned your plantation.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this. So also around 6 or 7, my aunt moved into a plantation. They bought this plantation for $10,000 because it had been burned to the ground. This is in Georgia. Um, and they restored it. And now that place was really, 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 really scary. There was one room in particular, and I'm pretty sure my cousin probably locked me in the closet in that room. But anyway, it was like this huge dining room, and the temperature was always considerably colder, and it was just, you'd see, these were the kinds of things you'd see out of the corner of your eye. You wouldn't see them like directly. So I almost think that, I don't know if the mirror just being around through all of this is kind of like, I've heard it called an anchor object, when things anchor themselves to you to, produce high strangeness.
Right.
But no, as a child, aside from just seeing and feeling weird things, like nothing bad happened. I think just my dad being gone a lot for work,
Yeah.
that was probably a very, probably wasn't a super happy time.
Right.
So yeah.
One of the instances that I remember for myself, my dad had moved into this really old apartment building. It used to be a house, and they converted it into a couple of different apartments. It was in Claremont, New Hampshire. And he used he had this freaking mask, and he would wait until we were all having a movie night, and me and all my siblings and my step siblings, and we'd all be sitting there in front of the TV, and all of a sudden there'd be like this freaking thing in the corner, and he's coming out like out of the darkness with this mask on, and we're like, holy shit, and we are all screaming and stuff like that. And then I remember after the very first time that he did it, I don't know if it was just because I was expecting him to be standing in the corner or something with this mask on, but ever since then I just started seeing people standing in the corner, and it wasn't him.
Oh,
I don't know if it was
Where the shadow.
necessarily like shadow figures or whatever,
yes,
but
yes.
I do remember just being, every room I entered, I would look around, and the basement of that place it was just ground. It wasn't cement. It was rocks, for the foundation to hold up the house. But like the what you walked on was just dirt, sand.
Yeah, I imagine something happened in that house at some point.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I haven't really gone back to look, but Tanya, do you remember ever experiencing anything other than dad scaring us?
It's funny. I didn't remember Dad doing that until you mentioned it. I can't remember the mask, but I remember him like sneaking up on us and scaring us with that mask. And I don't remember what it looked like, but I remember him doing that. But as you were talking about, seeing people in corners and stuff, I was thinking I did actually remember there was one thing that happened in that house in Claremont. I think for whatever reason, our cousin was visiting us there, Ellen. And I remember, or I feel like I remember it being our cousin Ellen, but it makes more sense for it to have been our stepbrother. But it was just,
Right.
you and Elwin. I'll just say it was Elwin because I very vividly remember it being Elwin, although I don't know why he would have been there. But anyway, we're outside and I was inside. And you guys like came inside and walked past me and like went down into the basement, actually. And then like 5 minutes later, you guys came back inside and walked past me. And I was like, didn't you guys just come inside? And you were both confused. You were both just like, no, we were not in here. We've been outside. But then you walked past me and went in the basement, like, the two of you that had just passed me before did. And that's the only thing I remember happening in that place.
Oh, So you saw like a doppelganger spirit, like a deja vu, like you were premonitioning us coming through.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember having experience, actually a couple of experiences like that in the trailer park that we lived in when I started kindergarten. So when I was really, really young.
Right.
I had a couple of experiences with you and our older brother Chris, and then like my dad coming. I remember I followed dad inside one time, and I followed him like he went into their bedroom, and I went in after him, and dad just like wasn't there. And then I looked outside, and he was still outside, and I was like, okay. But yeah, there were a couple of instances like that where like you and Chris would come inside from playing and walk by, and then like 5 minutes later you'd come back inside and walk past me again.
Oh no shit.
Yeah.
I never knew that. I don't remember any of that. Anything like that happening. I don't even remember you ever being like, "Weren't you just in here?"
Well, it
Like,
wouldn't have been as significant for you as it was for
right,
me because I was creeped the hell out.
right.
That's so weird. You've given me a new rabbit hole to fall down. Now I've got to look into this documentary stuff.
Yeah. That was very
So
creepy.
Jenny, do you have you ever seen like a spirit physically, like in a physical form of any kind, other
Meaning,
than shadowy? Or wait, no, I guess you would say the flannel man was physical,
yes,
wasn't it?
yes,
B?
both times, yes,
Yeah. Were you able to like see facial features of any kind at all?
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing because I just assumed I was crazy, and not saying I'm not, but anyway, I was like this very much was in physical form both times when I was a child and in 2012.
Wow. That's that's pretty cool because a lot of people say when they see like a physical spirit, they can't necessarily see the face. So that's interesting.
And like the shadow stuff was it's called shadow people for a reason. Like it was
Right.
very just massive black, just what they described.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That's interesting. Um, Tanya, do you have any questions on anything that she's talked about?
No, I really don't think so. I think, yeah, I don't think I do.
So your Instagram is 100% that witch. Do you do any witch activity?
So this is all very new. I'm learning. I'm a baby witch, but yes. Like I'm learning to. I've got tarot cards, and I'm learning to read those. I'm getting pretty okay at that. So I do a little candle magic. A little. I went and bought a whole bunch of herbs today at the winter solstice market. So I'm gonna practice maybe some. I don't know, some cooking, maybe some herbal magic, but basically right now it's tarot. I read my tarot cards probably 3 or 4 days a week, basically to learn them. But
Right.
I'm ready to just do this.
So the last woman that we just had on for episode 12 is actually like an a working medium tarot card reader.
I think I listened to that one last night.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was a good one. She was not only was she funny, she was intelligent and she like explained everything so well and it was really good. I thought.
Yeah, she was good. And isn't she the one who was talking about your spirit guide? Was that her? Was that
Yes, that was her.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. No, that was really cool.
Yeah, that caught me a little off guard, but not completely. Like I wasn't expecting her to actually tell me that there was somebody with me. So that was pretty cool. But like I had stated to her in that episode, I had a girlfriend in high school that basically told me the same thing.
Yeah.
Except she didn't tell me that it was she was my had been my spirit guide. But she so when we would call each other every night. It was like cell phones were fairly new. It was like 2004, 2005. So it was just like this little flip phone, and they were like this big.
I remember.
And we'd call each other every night. I'd be laying in bed, and we'd talk for a little bit. And there was one time where she was telling me that there was somebody sitting on my brother's bed. So my older brother happened to be living with me at the time that he just split from his the mother of his children. So he moved back home for a little bit, and we were sharing a room. And she's like, don't worry, he's not there for you. And I'm laying there, and I don't want to move. And she's like, no, it's fine. I was like, well, this is kind of scary because I don't like this shit. Because I've seen shit like growing up and stuff, but none of it was malevolent. Malevolent.
We got you.
So, yeah, none of it was harmful. So I don't know. Don't necessarily know why I was scared, but she said, yeah, he has a hole in his face. And I was like, what? And so what happened is my older brother had a friend in high school that had killed himself by shooting himself in the face. And she was basically telling me that he was watching my brother.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so, and that was another like solidifying thing for me growing up, was that I'm pretty 100% sure. And then her personality changed after she would be telling, because it was like a good like 2 weeks straight she would tell me stuff like this. And then all of a sudden, like, her her demeanor and stuff started changing. It's almost like, I think maybe like she opened herself up to something negative, and it kind of, she didn't even really know. I mean, we were 15 at the time. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's really young. And I mean, it sounds like, well, she was a medium. She might have been a bit clairvoyant as well. So
right.
that's a lot. That's a lot.
Right, yeah, because well, not to get into too many specifics, she kind of got ended up being violent with me a lot. And a lot of it would be, I guess, not being violent with your partner isn't really like justifiable anyways, but there would be times that I would say like that it wasn't justifiable, I guess.
Right.
Like, we weren't arguing or anything. It would just all of a sudden I'd get punched in the face.
Yeah, that sounds like she had some, maybe some anger issues, perhaps.
Yeah. So it was she was an interesting person, to say the least. But have you decided to connect with a medium yourself for like your own kind of a reading?
I haven't. I would absolutely be open to that. Because that's, I don't have that gift. I mean, I know I don't. So so yeah, I would definitely be open. I'm open to a lot of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like being open-minded to things, not necessarily believing in it or being married to the idea of things, but being like, oh yeah, I guess that's a possible thing. I feel like that's like the best way to be in a lot of instances. I mean, because nobody 100% knows what's going on
No,
around here. So
no, we've got a lot of things that we talk about that cannot be proven or not proven. So, why not?
right,
Go down the road. Why not?
right. There was another question I had it in the back of my head, and I'm blanking on it right now. Yeah, nope, I lost it. It went away. Bye. It's gone. But I had it. It was there. I'll probably remember it after we're done, but it's all right. So would you want to plug your Instagram or whatever, get some if you want follow people to follow you. I'm not 100% sure how many people actually listen and watch, so
I mean, can we plug something else?
we can plug whatever you want to plug.
All right, let's plug the framework here.
Okay, so my name is Oren. I'm Jenny's partner, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, so as we were talking about a little bit earlier, I kind of had what I'd call a recovered memory several years ago about a Men in Black experience I had as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always been interested in aliens and cryptids and weird stuff. But when I had this like recovered memory, that sent me down, you know, the rabbit hole of really studying and researching things hardcore. And, you know, I did that just kind of for my own satisfaction at first. And then the more stuff I started reading and learning, and, you know, I started putting things together and like, oh, well, this thing over here reminds me of this thing that I read about this. And like the further you get down these rabbit holes, the more connections between all this stuff you see. And where I started off very, you know, flesh and blood, nuts and bolts, you know, these are aliens coming down in their spaceships and it's just all misinterpreted technology. I still think there's a very big aspect of that, but there's a whole lot of strange stuff going on in all this. And so at that point I was like, man, I just started putting like notes down just for my own, you know, just so I could go back and read them later and keep all this stuff straight. And at some point, you know, when I had 10,000 words worth of notes, I was like, I need to start like organizing this into a book. So I'm currently writing a book that's kind of highlighting all these connections between the UFO phenomenon, cryptids, high strangeness, and the paranormal. So when we started that, and, you know, with all Jennie's experiences, we're like, you know, we need to start going to conventions and conferences and whatnot, start networking and meeting people. And so we've started doing that here in the past 6 months or so. And it's just been awesome how many people we've met and talked to. And I can't believe, you know, how much success, quote unquote, I'll say, we've had just in a short period of time. So you can follow me on Instagram. It's at the Framework UFO. And I picked the name The Framework because, you know, all these paranormal, alien, whatnot things fit into some sort of framework. And I think you've got to ask questions, like you said, don't be married to any one idea or another. Look at things with an open mind, ask questions, ask, you know, all these things we've always heard, what could this really mean? And then build your own framework at that point. So if I can plug anything, that would be it. So thank you for having me on and letting me hang out. So.
Nice. I would actually like to do your own episode for you on your own.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
Anytime. I'd love to come on and we can chat about aliens and Men in Black and anything you want to.
Nice. Nice. I love that's one of my favorite topics other than ghosts and spirits is the possibility of aliens in UFOs, although I personally don't think I've ever seen a UFO, or probably not even an alien.
Either, but that was like totally my gateway into all this was aliens and UFOs. And then, like I said, you start seeing the connections between things and it gets harder and harder to deny that there's something legitimately strange going on in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. When I started doing more networking for this show, I started talking to people in my personal life, like at work or whatever. I'd just be like, hey, you believe in ghosts? And they're like, no. I'm like, all right. And then I'd walk away, and then another person would be like, yeah. And I'd be like,
exactly.
So I do this podcast,
and they're like, to be that weird guy at work. Same thing.
Tell you their stories. I'm doing some jokes.
Yeah. Then there was this one guy. He was a mechanic, but he ended up leaving, and he was telling me a little bit about some kind of story, but his wife was like really into it and stuff. And we ended up talking about conventions and whatever, like you were just saying. And I was like, I really want to start going to like these paranormal, cryptid, alien conventions and like really getting out there and networking and all this stuff. And I think I found one that the closest was, that was to like closest to me was in Georgia.
Oh, wow.
I think, or like coming up anyway. I'm sure there's ones that will come closer to me, But
seems like just in our experience, there's a lot of like Bigfoot conventions and stuff like that. But when you get into like more of the paranormal and aliens, at least in our part of the country, there's not as much. So anything remotely like that, we try to go to if it's feasible.
yeah, that was actually my question. So thank you for saying that, because it just came back to me. Do you believe in Bigfoot? I try to ask everybody that I have on.
Oh boy, that's going to take a lot more than one answer. One word for that.
I do. I think Bigfoot personally is much more than some flesh and blood ape just running around in the woods. I think there's too much strangeness involved in all this for it to just be that.
For sure.
So long story short, yes, I do.
And I'll second that. Yes.
All right, guys. It was awesome having you on. Oren, I'll definitely message you and try and schedule something for you alone.
Absolutely. I'd love to come on anytime. Thank you for having us.
Perfect.
I am 100%. I think there's 3 underscores that would, clearly I'm not that creative. Anyway, if anyone wants to tell me their jokes or tell me their stories, I'm there.
Nice. It was lovely meeting you guys. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
You guys too. Thank you so much.
You have just left the land of where the weird ones are. You've crossed through multiple dimensions. You've traveled through space and time. You have arrived back to your destination, where time isn't even real, and everything you see is a figment of your imagination.